Well, there's clearly no cost of living crisis in the halls of Treasury because they rounded out the year today with the biggest increase in non-pandemic spending since the 1980s. And that's not because of inflation, that's after inflation is accounted for. A 5.7% increase in real spending after inflation. Only during a financial crisis has spending increased that much. Federal government spending will increase next year and make up 27.2% of GDP, which, apart from COVID, is the highest level in 39 years. Spending will be up $58.3 billion this financial year, with an extra $25 billion added today. The budget deficits will be $22 billion higher over the forward estimates than laid out in the May budget. But all Finance Minister Katy Gallagher wanted to talk about today was how great this all is for women.
Now, I just want to make a few comments about women because we've really put women at the centre of our economic strategy since coming to government, and I may not get a question about it during the press conference. And whether it be through appointments, such as the ones the Treasurer made to the Reserve Bank boards this week, but also into women's wages, to women's safety, and to the way we approach and value the care economy, which again is quite different to our predecessors. You'll see more investments in women's safety, in the significant additional investment into making childcare or early education and care universal, the investment in wages for those predominantly feminised industries. Even if you look at fee-free TAFE, where 62% of the people using free TAFE under that program are women, even the HECS arrangements where we know that women hold 61% of the debts.
Oh, well done, Katy. I mean, you know, there might be a reason she anticipated she wasn't going to get a question on that, because no one particularly cares. But I wonder perhaps whether the government has seen some polling that says they're in trouble with women, or perhaps women who traditionally do more work around the home are more acutely aware of how much the cost of living has increased because they're more likely to be doing things like the grocery shopping. So they're making an effort to say, look, it's not that bad, we're helping you. But the reality is that it doesn't matter which way they spin it. While government spending has been going up, household spending has been going down, or at least the money you have left over to spend at the end of the week has been going down. Here was Treasurer Jim Chalmers today.
This is a responsible set of books which reflects the very substantial progress that we have made cleaning up the budget. 2 surpluses in the first 2 years, a smaller deficit this year, and then even with some slippage in subsequent years, a $200 billion improvement in the budget position since we were elected, which means much less debt for Australians to repay.
So this year's deficit is smaller than predicted and there's a $200 billion improvement in the budget. But that money is coming from you. Today's numbers show that income tax receipts are $21.5 billion higher than expected over the forward estimates. So despite handing out tax cuts this year, they're actually making more in income tax. That, of course, is because bracket creep is a real problem. And while the government might pretend to fix it, they don't really, and they don't want to, because it's worth so much money. Income tax receipts just a decade ago were $258.8 billion. In the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook today, for this financial year, income tax receipts are predicted to be $496.07 billion. The amount of income tax the federal government pockets has nearly doubled in a decade. Now, in the last decade, the population increased by 15.9%, and sure, there's been high inflation in recent years, but the increase in income tax has far outstripped both inflation and population growth. All tax revenue across all levels of government, as you can see here, has exploded in the past decade. Any improvement in the budget is because of you, money that would be very useful in your pocket at the moment. And Chalmers has the gall to say that things are looking up.
We are on track for a soft landing in our economy. And you can see that right across the economic indicators that we are talking about today. The economy is growing, but slowly. Inflation is moderating, real wages and real incomes are growing, unemployment is low, 1 million jobs have been created, participation is around record highs, the gender pay gap has narrowed, tax cuts and cost of living help is rolling out.
So he claims that real wages are up. Now, real wages, not real rages, though we are raging, I think, about this result today. But real wages, according to the ABS, are allegedly up 3.6% over the last year. But you tell me, are you better off since Albanese became Prime Minister? The GDP per capita has gone backwards for 7 straight quarters. We're in the longest household recession in half a century. But the Treasurer gets to stand there and say, it's all good, wages are growing and so's the economy. And that's the other one. The economy isn't actually growing. We are actually in a recession and have been for some time. But the government has plugged that with high migration and government spending that makes it look like there's economic growth without there actually being any growth in the economy. And that high migration and government spending is part of the reason, as the RBA has warned multiple times, that you haven't had an interest rate cut and probably won't for a while. Government spending, up $58.3 billion this financial year, is a large driver of inflation. Also, Chalmers basically can pretend the economy is on track when it clearly isn't, because households are spending less. At least Paul Keating was honest when he said this.
Well, I'll just give you a few comments on the national accounts. The first thing to say is that the accounts do show that Australia is in a recession. The most important thing about that is that this is a recession that Australia had to have.